Banjo-Guitar, musical monstrosity or curiosity, you decide. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the 6-string banjo guitar, how I like to use it, but I'll be most interested to find out in the comments if you think this is a good idea. Do you find this instrument to be a monstrosity or a curiosity, or maybe somewhere in between? I started using this instrument, I guess, over 10 years ago or so. I find it works really nicely for some finger picking type of stuff, especially finger picking that's kind of on the ragtimey side, like the thing I played there in the intro, you know, stuff like... It sounds kind of cool for that kind of thing. And that's kind of similar to the tenor banjo. So the tenor banjo is a 4-string banjo used a lot in like New Orleans jazz, traditional New Orleans jazz and stuff. And a lot of times I'll play up the neck and play chord voicings up the neck if I want to sort of imitate the sound of that tenor banjo. Like I might... Now, what's missing from that, at least if you're used to playing guitar, is the bass. So you don't have a lot of bass when you're playing up there like that. And that's why a lot of times I use this in like a group situation where there's a bass player. This can be a really cool instrument for that. So I can get that kind of jazzy, ragtimey sound, similar to a tenor banjo that's used in New Orleans jazz. Now, the banjo guitar is used mainly in standard tuning, so it's the same tuning as the guitar. So that's the big advantage, is whatever riffs or chord shapes you already know on the guitar, you can play on the banjo guitar and get this banjo type of sound. Now, if you want to get the sounds of like kind of like a 5-string bluegrass banjo or clawhammer banjo, it's a little bit trickier. I'd probably suggest just get a 5-string banjo if you want to get that kind of sound, because it'll be easier to get that sound because it's got a special drone string and some things on it. Sometimes I'll try to get a sound like that, but usually I use this more for this kind of ragtimey stuff. It works really well, and it works good, like I said, for finger picking. It's just pretty nice. So I can do that kind of stuff with it, sort of picking stuff with it. It works pretty good for kind of swingy, sort of jazzy kind of stuff as well. That kind of strumming. So the history of this instrument goes back really far. It goes back to the 1920s and even earlier than that. But one guy you should check out if you want to hear traditional banjo guitar is a musician by the name of Papa Charlie Jackson. Papa Charlie Jackson was a New Orleans musician, and he started recording in 1924. And has some really interesting music. A lot of it has that kind of ragtimey or almost poppy kind of sound from that era. And some of it's got a little bit of blues in it as well. Papa Charlie's most famous song was a tune called Shake That Thing. So check out Papa Charlie Jackson. Another player that used the banjo guitar, who was a really important figure in the history of blues guitar, is a guy by the name of Lonnie Johnson. So Lonnie Johnson, he played guitar, but he used the banjo guitar when he played, I think especially with he played with Louis Armstrong in the Hot Fives, I think it was. And so he's playing with a bunch of horn players. So if you think about before there was electric guitars, right? We got acoustic wood body guitars. It's pretty hard to compete with a guy playing, a trumpet or a sousaphone or a tuba. If you're playing on a wood body guitar, it doesn't have that much projection to it. But an instrument like this, that really cuts through when you dig into it because you got this banjo head on it. And that's similar to like a resonator guitar is another instrument that has that sort of similar effect. It doesn't have a banjo head, but it has a resonator which helps project the sound. And that's the reason why resonator guitars were also really popular in the 1920s, in that pre-electric era. That's a tongue twister there. In that pre-electric era, you couldn't plug in and turn up. You're trying to play with drummers, with horn players, and an acoustic guitar is like bringing a knife to a gunfight, so to speak. So some of the reasons why, the banjo guitar, I think, has been around for as long as it is. If you're still watching now, you probably think it's at least a musical curiosity, possibly a musical instrument. Let me see. I'll play a little bit for you a couple tunes I wrote on it. So this is a tune I wrote from my group, the Sanctified Grumblers. It's called "Keep Your Porch Light Low." It goes something like this. Light low, let I be coming round your door. And now, baby, keep your porch light low. I love you, baby, love your dark brown eyes. I know you got me, baby, hypnotized. Love you, baby, love your dark brown eyes. Driving wheel, it's locomotion that you make me feel. You know that you move me, you're my driving wheel, that's right. Keep your porch light low. Yeah, so that's the song called Keep Your Porch Light Low that I recorded with the Sanctified Grumblers. Like I said, an ensemble situation. That's just an 8-bar blues. So yeah, it's got a different kind of sound. Its weakness is really the bass. It doesn't have quite as much of a resonant or chunky bass sound as a guitar would. Now, ultimately, I'd love to have one of the old Gibson banjos, like the ones that Papa Charlie Jackson played, had an even bigger head, so it was even bigger here. So the bigger that head is in general, the more bass, the more thump you're going to get out of the instrument. And so since that's kind of what banjos tend to lack, banjos tend to have a lot of treble, a lot of bite, and not as much bass or thump. So that's kind of something to keep in mind if you decide to take up the banjo guitar. I'm not so sure I recommend it or not, but if you go that route, if you go down that rabbit hole, keep in mind, yeah, bigger banjo head usually equals more bass sound. So maybe I'll wrap up and play one more tune. This is one that I also think sounds good on this, an instrumental I wrote called Scrappy Cat. It was about a stray cat that used to live in the neighborhood that my wife and I called Scrappy Cat. So this one's for all the stray cats. Scrappy Cat. So yeah, so other blues banjo. I did also want to mention, if you want to hear sort of bluesy banjo playing, because there's not a ton of it, Gus Cannon is a good guy to check out. He did not play the banjo guitar. He played a regular or some modification of a 4-string banjo, but he did a lot of cool stuff. Cannon's Jug Stompers is one of the jug bands that recorded back in the 20s and 30s. Another artist, one of my favorite guitar players, Reverend Gary Davis. He also played the banjo guitar and did a lot of kind of ragtimey, once again, that kind of ragtimey picking stuff on it, which sounds pretty cool. So, yeah, banjo guitar, monstrosity or curiosity. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you think it's a monstrosity, you're probably not watching this right now. But thank you anyway. If you are, I do appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by, folks. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.